You give your room to my wife, or you pack your bags." "My son, Mark," shouted those words in the middle of the dinner I had cooked myself. He didn't whisper it. He didn't imply it. He shouted it in front of everyone, as if he were giving an order to an employee, as if my room was negotiable, as if I had no right to say no in my own home. Jessica, his wife, was sitting next to him with that small, controlled smile she used when she knew she was going to get her way. My sister-in-law, Carol, looked away, uncomfortable, but saying nothing. My granddaughter, Emily, pressed her lips together and lowered her head. No one defended me. No one said a word. And I, Eleanor Vance, 69 years old, a widow, a devoted mother for decades, just sat there feeling something inside me break in a strange way. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. For the first time in a long time, I saw the situation exactly as it was. My son was kicking me out of my own room as if I were a piece of furniture that needed to be moved. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I took a deep breath, set my silverware on the table, and said in a voice so calm it surprised even me, "All right, Mark, I'll go pack my bags." The silence that followed was heavy. Mark looked at me, confused, as if he had expected screaming or tears. Jessica let out a nervous laugh. Carol cleared her throat. Emily looked up, surprised. But I had already stood up, folded my napkin carefully, and was walking toward my room with my back straight. That night, while they continued in the dining room pretending everything was normal, I was sitting on the edge of my bed with my cell phone in my hand. I wasn't crying. I wasn't paralyzed. I was looking at real estate listings for houses by the ocean. There was a listing that Sharon, my best friend, had sent me weeks ago on WhatsApp. It was a small, pretty house with a deck and an ocean view. She had written, "Eleanor, look at this. Someday you and I are going to have a house just like this, and we'll make a toast watching the sunset." I had replied with a laughing emoji, as if it were a distant fantasy. But that night, with the sound of glasses clinking and fake laughter coming from the dining room, I opened that message and looked at it with new eyes. The house was 2 hours from the city. It had 2 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a price that, while high, fit perfectly within my savings. Savings I had built up for years. Years of working as a freelance accountant. Years of saving every dollar I had left over after paying the bills for this house. Years of saying no to trips, to whims, to things I wanted for myself, because there was always something more urgent. Mark's college tuition, Mark's car, Mark's wedding, the rent for Mark and Jessica's apartment when they were short. I took a screenshot of the listing. I opened my banking app and checked my savings. I had enough, more than enough. And for the first time in decades, I thought something that made me feel both dizzy and free. This money is mine. The next morning, at 7 o'clock, I dialed the real estate agent's number. A young woman with a professional voice answered. I told her I wanted to see the property that same day. There was a brief pause, then she replied, "Perfect, Miss Vance. I'll see you at 11 o'clock. I confirmed, hung up, and stared at the phone screen as if I had just crossed an invisible line. Mark came downstairs at 9 o'clock, his hair a mess, yawning. He saw me sitting on the living room sofa and frowned. "Is breakfast ready?" "No," I replied without looking up. "I'm going out." "Where are you going so early?" "I have an appointment." He huffed, opened the refrigerator, and started pulling things out as if this house were his. "Well, don't be long. Jessica wants you to take her to the mall later." "I won't be able to," I said, and got up from the sofa before he could answer. Mark looked at me strangely, but said nothing more. I went up to my room, which was now officially Jessica's according to what had happened the night before, and pulled clean clothes from my closet. I got dressed calmly. A pair of jeans Sharon had convinced me to buy last month, a simple white blouse, and my walking shoes. I looked in the mirror and saw a 69-year-old woman who still had clarity in her eyes and decision in her jaw. I left the house at 10:30. Mark was watching television in the living room. Jessica was still asleep. No one asked me where I was going. No one stopped me. I drove the 2 hours to the coast with the windows down and an old playlist of songs I used to listen to when I was young. It had been years since I had driven alone for so long. It had been years since I had done anything alone, really. There was always someone who needed something. Always a call, a favor, an emergency. But that day, driving down the highway with the wind hitting my face, I felt light. I arrived at the house at 11 o'clock sharp. The real estate agent was already there, a man in his 50s with a white button-down shirt and a friendly smile. "Miss Vance, a pleasure. Come on in." The house was even nicer in person. Small, yes, but bright. The windows looked directly out at the ocean. The deck had enough space for a table and some chairs. I could picture myself there, drinking coffee in the mornings, reading, listening to the waves. "What do you think?" the agent asked. "I think it's perfect," I replied. He smiled. "Do you want to think about it for a few days?" "No," I said. "I want to buy it now." The agent looked at me, surprised, as if he wasn't used to someone deciding so quickly. "Are you sure, Miss Vance? This is a big decision." "I've been making decisions for 69 years, I told him. "This is the first one I'm making just for me." He nodded, still a bit taken aback, but pulled the papers from his briefcase. He explained the details. The price was $180,000. I could make the wire transfer in 2 days. The house was free of liens and ready for closing. I nodded as he spoke, but in my mind, I was already doing the math. I had $210,000 saved. I would have $30,000 left over for whatever came next. I signed the first documents right there, on the empty kitchen table of that house that already felt like mine. The agent gave me his card, explained the next steps, and told me I could move in within 72 hours if I wanted. "Perfect," I said. "I want to move in 72 hours." I left the house with the temporary keys in my hand and stood on the deck, looking at the ocean. The waves came and went with a steady, predictable, calm rhythm. They didn't ask for anything. They didn't demand anything. They just existed. I took out my phone and took a picture of the horizon. I sent it to Sharon on WhatsApp with a simple message. "I did it," she replied in seconds. "What did you do?" "I bought the beach house." There was a long pause. Then the messages started pouring in, one after another. "You're not serious, Eleanor. Answer me. Did you really buy the house? When? How? Does Mark know?" I laughed to myself on that empty deck. "Mark doesn't know anything," I wrote, "and I'm not going to tell him until I'm already living here." Sharon called me immediately. I answered, and before I could speak, she was already screaming with excitement. "Eleanor Vance, I can't believe you did it. I am so proud of you. Tell me everything. What happened? What did Mark say when you told him?" "I haven't told him anything yet," I replied. "Yesterday at dinner, he yelled at me that I either give Jessica my room or pack my bags. So, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to pack my bags and I'm going to leave." Sharon was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. "That boy has no idea who he messed with, does he?" "No," I said, looking at the ocean. "He has no idea." I returned to the city that same afternoon. I drove slower, in no hurry, enjoying the ride. When I got back to the house, it was almost 6 o'clock in the evening. Mark was in the living room watching some show on TV. Jessica was in the kitchen preparing something, using my pots, my stove, as if she already owned the place. "Where were you?" Mark asked without looking up from the screen. "Taking care of things," I replied, and went straight up to my room. I closed the door and stood in the middle of the room, looking at everything I had accumulated over the years. Framed photos of Mark as a child, the watch my husband gave me before he died, the quilt I had bought on a trip to Oaxaca, the books stacked on the nightstand. Everything had a story, a memory, a piece of my life, but none of it made me feel at home anymore. I pulled 2 large suitcases from the closet and started packing. Clothes first, then shoes. Important documents, jewelry, photos that I actually cared about, not the ones I kept out of obligation. I worked in silence for hours. No one came up to ask what I was doing. No one knocked on the door. At 10 o'clock at night, Mark shouted from downstairs, "Mom, are you going to make dinner or what?" "No," I shouted back. "Order something." There was a silence. Then I heard murmuring. Probably Mark complaining to Jessica, but they didn't come up. They didn't insist. They were used to me always giving in, to me always fixing things, to me always being available. I kept packing. The next day, very early, I called Sharon. I need you to do me a huge favor, I said. Anything, she replied. I need you to come with me to the title company. I'm putting this house up for sale. There was a brief silence. Then Sharon said in a firm voice, I'll be there in half an hour. I ate breakfast alone in the kitchen. Mark and Jessica were still sleeping in my room. I washed my mug, dried it, and put it away. Then I looked in my phone for the contact of Susan Hayes, a lawyer I knew from my walking group. I texted her on WhatsApp. Susan, I need urgent legal advice regarding a property sale and my will. Do you have time this week? She replied quickly. I have time today at 4 o'clock. Does that work for you? Perfect, I wrote. Sharon arrived at 9 o'clock sharp. She rang the doorbell, and I stepped out before Mark came downstairs. We hugged at the door, and she looked me in the eyes with that mix of concern and pride that only a friend of so many years can have. Are you sure about this? She asked me. More sure than I've been about anything in my life, I replied. We went to the realtor's office together. The process was faster than I thought. I listed the house at a fair market price, $320,000. The realtor explained that at that price and location, it would probably sell in less than a month. Perfect, I said. Sharon took me to a cafe afterward. We sat at a table by the window, and she ordered 2 cappuccinos. And now what? She asked. Now I wait for everything to close. This house, and the beach house, is almost mine. When everything is settled, I'm leaving. No dramatic goodbyes. No long explanations. I'm just leaving. And Mark? Mark is going to have to learn to live without using his mother as the solution to all his problems. Sharon smiled and raised her cup. I'll drink to that. We clinked our coffee mugs as if they were champagne glasses. That afternoon, I went to my appointment with Susan. Her office was small but tidy, filled with law books and perfectly labeled folders. She greeted me with a firm handshake and offered me water. Tell me what you need, Eleanor. I told her everything. The dinner, Mark's shout, the purchase of the beach house, the sale of this house. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in a legal pad. When I finished, she set her pen on the desk and looked at me seriously. Does Mark know any of this? No, I replied, and I don't want him to know until it's done. I understand, Susan said. Legally, he doesn't have to know anything. The house is in your name. Your savings are yours. You aren't married. You have no obligation to inform him of your financial decisions. Good. But, Susan continued, I need you to think about something important. What happens if Mark reacts badly? What if he tries to sue you or claim something? Let him try, I said. I don't owe him anything. I gave him everything for 42 years. That's enough. Susan nodded. Then we're going to do this right. I'm going to prepare a document that makes it clear your assets are yours, and any future transfers will be on your terms. I'm also going to update your will. My will? Yes. Because if anything happens to you, I want you to have total control over who receives what. Is there anyone besides Mark? My granddaughter, Emily, I said. She's always been different. She has always treated me with real affection, not obligation. Perfect. We'll include her. I left that office feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Control. Control over my life, over my money, over my future. The next few days in that house were strange. I was still living there, cooking, cleaning, doing the things I had always done, but something had changed. I no longer did it on autopilot. I did it knowing that every day that passed was one day less in that place. Mark and Jessica had settled into my room, as if it had always been theirs. Jessica reorganized the closet, moved the furniture, hung her clothes where mine used to be. Mark said nothing. He didn't ask how I felt sleeping in the guest room. He didn't ask if I was upset. He simply assumed I had accepted my place. One afternoon, while I was in the kitchen preparing lunch, Jessica came down with a handwritten list. Eleanor, she said without a greeting, I need you to go to the grocery store and buy these things. Mark and I are inviting some friends over on Saturday. She handed me the list. I read the items. Expensive wine, imported cheeses, premium cuts of meat, desserts from a specific bakery. It all easily added up to over $200. And who is going to pay for this? I asked, without looking up from the paper. Jessica looked at me as if the question was absurd. Well, you, obviously. It's your house. Ah, I replied, folding the list carefully. I thought it wasn't my house anymore. I thought it was yours now. She frowned. Don't start with the drama, Eleanor. You know what I mean. Yes, I know exactly what you mean, I said, handing the list back to her. If you want to have a party, fine, but you're paying for it. Jessica's mouth fell open, stunned. What's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? I'm not acting any way, I replied calmly. I'm just telling you that if you want to host something, you host it with your money. She huffed and stormed out of the kitchen, yelling, Mark, your mother is being impossible. Mark came down the stairs looking annoyed. What is it now? Your mother says she won't pay for the food for the get-together on Saturday, Jessica said, crossing her arms. Mark looked at me as if I were a spoiled child. Mom, don't be difficult, it's just one meal. Exactly, I said. It's just one meal, which you two can pay for. And what has gotten into you lately? Mark asked, raising his voice. You've been weird since last week. You talk back. You don't help. It's like you're annoyed that we're here. I'm not annoyed that you're here, I said, looking him straight in the eye. I'm annoyed that you treat me like I work for you. Nobody is treating you like that, Jessica said. No? I asked. Then what do you call what happened at dinner last week? What do you call shouting at me to pack my bags if I don't give you my room? There was an uncomfortable silence. Mark looked away. Jessica pressed her lips together. You were exaggerating, Mom, Mark finally said. I didn't shout at you. I just asked you to be reasonable. You asked me to be reasonable? I repeated slowly. By shouting at me, in front of everyone. It was a misunderstanding, Jessica chimed in with a soft voice, the one she used when she wanted to seem like the peacemaker. We were all stressed. Mark didn't mean to say it like that. But he did say it like that, I replied. And you two ended up with my room. So I guess the misunderstanding worked out well for you. Mark snorted. You know what? I'm not arguing about this. If you don't want to help with the food, don't help. We'll figure it out. Perfect, I said, and went back to what I was doing. They went back up to the room, muttering to each other. I heard fragments. She's unbearable. I don't know what's wrong with her. She never used to be like this. They were right. I never used to be like this. I used to say yes to everything. I used to apologize for things that weren't my fault. I used to live to please them. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I went down to the living room and sat on the sofa with my phone. I opened my chat with Sharon and wrote, Every day I spend here makes me realize how much time I wasted being the person they wanted me to be. She replied immediately, despite the hour. But you're not wasting time anymore. Now you're taking it back. I smiled in the darkness of the living room. The next day, the real estate agent called me. Miss Vance, I have good news. I already have 3 people interested in seeing your house. Can we schedule viewings for this week? Yes, I replied, but I need them to be at specific times, between 10 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, when my son isn't here. The agent didn't ask any questions. He just said, Perfect, I'll arrange everything and confirm with you. I hung up and stared at the phone. This was happening. It was really happening. On Wednesday, the first couple came to see the house. Mark and Jessica had gone out to run some errands. I greeted the people, the potential buyers, at the door. They were young, recently married, with that excitement in their eyes that comes from looking for your first home. I showed them every room, the large kitchen, the living room with good light, the small but well-kept backyard. They asked questions, took pictures, measured spaces. At the end, at the door, they told me, It's beautiful, ma'am. We're going to think about it and let you know. 2 other viewings came that week, all while Mark wasn't there. All ended with the same phrase, We'll think about it. On Friday, Susan called me. Eleanor, the documents are ready. Can you come in and sign them? I'll be there tomorrow, I said. On Saturday morning, while Mark and Jessica were still asleep, I left the house and drove to Susan's office. She greeted me with fresh coffee and a thick folder full of papers. This is your updated will, she said, pointing to the first document. Emily receives 60% of your assets. Mark receives 40%. And here is the clause specifying that if anyone tries to contest the will, they automatically forfeit their share. I signed every page, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief because I was protecting what was mine. Sadness because I had to protect myself from my own son. "How do you feel?" Susan asked when I finished signing. "Like I'm finally waking up," I replied. That afternoon, when I returned to the house, Mark and Jessica were in the living room, arguing in low voices. When they saw me walk in, they immediately fell silent. "Where were you?" Mark asked. "Out," I replied, without giving details. "Out where?" "Taking care of things." He looked at me suspiciously, but didn't press. Jessica, however, had that expression she wore when she was planning something. "Eleanor," she said sweetly, "we need to talk to you about something important." I sat in the armchair across from them. "About what?" "Mark and I are being evicted from our apartment," Jessica said directly. "The owner wants to sell it, and we have to be out in 2 weeks." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "Are you already looking for another place?" "Well," Mark said, "we were thinking we could stay here for a while. After all, there's enough space." "Here." "Here," I repeated. "Yes," Jessica said. "It wouldn't be forever, just until we find something. A few months, maybe." I looked her in the eyes. Then I looked at Mark. They were both looking at me with that mixture of expectation and demand disguised as need. "No," I said simply. "What?" Mark asked. "No, you can't stay here." "Mom," Mark said, his voice rising, "we're your family. Are you going to throw us out on the street?" "I'm not throwing you out on the street," I replied calmly. "I'm letting you solve your problems like the adults you are." Mark shot to his feet. "I can't believe what I'm hearing." "What is wrong with you, Mom? Since when are you so selfish?" "Selfish?" I repeated the word slowly, letting it hang in the air. "And what else do you want me to call it?" he said, throwing his hands up. "You have this huge house all to yourself, and you won't help your own son." "This house isn't huge, Mark. It has 3 bedrooms. One is mine, which you are now occupying. Another is the guest room, where I'm sleeping now. And the third is my office, where I work." "Then turn the office into a bedroom," Jessica said. "It's not that hard." I stared at her. "My office is where I earn the money that pays for this house." "Where do you suggest I work? In the kitchen?" "Don't be dramatic," Mark said. "You're always exaggerating." I took a deep breath. "I'm not going to argue about this. The answer is no." "Mom," Mark said, changing his tone, now softer, more manipulative. "I know you've been stressed lately. I know I might have said things I shouldn't have at dinner. But we're family. Families help each other. Families respect each other," I replied. "And you haven't respected me in a long time." "That's not true." "No?" I asked. "What do you call shouting at me to pack my bags if I don't give you my room? Respect?" I already apologized for that. He was lying. He hadn't. He had never said it. But I knew inventing it was his way of getting out of the conversation. "No, Mark. You didn't apologize. You didn't even acknowledge you did it." Jessica intervened with that victim-like voice she knew how to use so well. "Eleanor, we are really in a difficult situation. We have nowhere to go. Are you really going to turn your back on us?" "You are adults with jobs," I replied. "You can rent another place. You can get a loan. You can do what millions of people do when they need housing." "But you're his mother," Jessica insisted. "Mothers are supposed to help." "And I did," I said, getting up from the armchair. "I helped for 42 years. I paid for your college, Mark. I bought you your first car. I loaned you money for the wedding. I've helped you with rent more times than I can count. I've helped enough." "I can't believe you're being this way," Mark said with a trembling voice, pretending to be on the verge of tears. "My own mother, denying me a roof over my head." "I'm not denying you a roof," I said, walking toward the stairs. "I'm denying you my roof. There's a difference." I went up to my room, the guest room, and closed the door. I heard Mark and Jessica talking downstairs, their voices rising in volume. I heard stray words. Ungrateful, unthankful, selfish, bitter old woman. I sat on the bed and opened my phone. I texted Sharon. "It just happened. They asked to move in." I told them no. She replied with an audio message. Her voice sounded proud. Eleanor Vance, you are my hero. How did they take it? As expected, I wrote. They called me selfish. Oh, please, Sharon replied in another audio. Selfish is what they've been to you their entire lives. You're just setting boundaries. That's not selfishness. It's survival. I smiled at the screen. Thanks, Sharon. That night, Mark and Jessica went out without telling me where. They came back late, after midnight. I heard them come up the stairs, go into my old room, and close the door harder than necessary. On Sunday morning, I woke up early as usual. I went down to the kitchen and made coffee just for myself. I no longer made breakfast for everyone. I no longer set the table for 3. I just served my own cup, my toast, my fruit. Mark came down around 11 o'clock, looking like he hadn't slept well. He saw me sitting at the table reading the news on my tablet and said nothing. He went straight to the coffee pot, poured himself a cup, and stood leaning against the counter, staring at me. What? I asked without looking up. Nothing, he said. I'm just wondering what happened to you. What happened to me? I repeated. Yeah, you used to be different. You used to care about your family. I put the tablet down on the table and looked at him directly. I used to care so much about my family that I forgot about myself. That's the difference. He snorted. That sounds like something you read in a cheap self-help book. It sounds like something I should have understood 30 years ago, I replied. Mark slammed his mug down on the counter. You know what, Mom? Do whatever you want. You've always done what you wanted anyway. I laughed. It was a short, almost bitter laugh. Mark, if I had done what I wanted, I would have traveled the world when your father died. I would have gotten the master's degree I always wanted. I would have lived alone, peacefully. But no. I stayed here, taking care of you, helping you, waiting for you to value me just a little. I do value you, he said, but without conviction. No, Mark, you use me. And there's a huge difference between valuing and using. He fell silent. He had no answer for that, because he knew it was true. Jessica came down a few minutes later, already dressed, with perfect makeup and that air of superiority she always carried. Good morning, she said without looking at me. Good morning, I replied. She poured herself coffee and sat next to Mark. They both ignored me, talking to each other in low voices as if I wasn't there. Eleanor, Jessica said suddenly, we need to use your car today. Ours is having problems. No, I said. What do you mean, no? I mean I'm not lending you my car. And how are we supposed to get around? Mark asked. In a taxi. In an Uber. You can walk. Like everyone else. Jessica let out a dry laugh. Unbelievable. First, you won't let us stay here, and now you won't even lend us the car. What's next? Are you going to charge us for the air we breathe in your house? If you want, you can leave right now and breathe the air somewhere else, I said, unfazed. Mark slammed his hand on the table. Enough. That's enough, Mom. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is too much. What's gotten into me, Mark, is that I'm tired. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of being treated like a maid. I'm tired of you assuming that everything I own is yours. Nobody assumes that, Jessica lied. No? I asked. Then tell me, Jessica, why are you sleeping in my bedroom? Why are you using my kitchen as if it's yours? Why do you assume I'm going to pay for your parties and lend you my things? She opened her mouth but said nothing. I got up from the table, washed my mug, and left the kitchen. I went up to my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and took several deep breaths. My phone buzzed. It was a message from the real estate agent. Miss Vance, the young couple who came on Wednesday wants to make an offer. $315,000. Are you interested? I replied immediately. Yes, I accept. Perfect, he wrote. I'll prepare the papers. We can close the sale in a week. 1 week. In 1 week, this house would no longer be mine, and Mark had no idea. That afternoon, while they were upstairs, I went down to the living room and started packing things discreetly. Photos I really wanted to keep. Books that mattered to me. Documents. I put everything in boxes that I hid in the guest room. Mark and Jessica didn't notice a thing. They were too busy with their own drama. On Monday morning, while Mark and Jessica were still sleeping, I left the house with 3 boxes in the car. I took them to a storage unit I had rented the week before. It was a small space, just enough to hold the essentials until I moved to the beach house permanently. The employee at the storage facility helped me register my name and handed me the keys. "Are you moving a lot of things?" she asked kindly. "Just the important stuff," I replied. I returned home before noon. Mark was in the living room with his laptop, working from the sofa. He watched me come in but said nothing. I went straight up to my temporary room and continued organizing. That afternoon I got a message from Susan. "Eleanor, the buyer for your house wants to move up the closing. They can be ready by Thursday. Does that work for you?" I stared at the message for several seconds. Thursday. 3 days. In 3 days, this house would officially stop being mine. "Perfect," I wrote. "Thursday is fine." I immediately called Sharon. "I need you to come with me on Thursday to sign the sale of the house." "I'll be there," she said without hesitation. "Do you know when you're moving to the beach?" "Friday," I replied. "I'm signing the sale on Thursday, and on Friday, I'm gone." "And Mark?" "Mark is going to find out on Thursday night, when it's too late to turn back." Sharon was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure you want to do it that way?" "Completely sure," I said. "If I tell him beforehand, he'll try to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty, to convince me not to do it. I've made my decision, and I'm not letting him change it." "You're right," Sharon said. "You're stronger than you think, Eleanor." "I'm learning to be," I replied. The next few days were strange. I was still living in that house, walking the halls, cooking in the kitchen, but mentally, I was already gone. I was at the beach, in my new house, in my new life. Mark and Jessica noticed my distance, but they interpreted it as a passing anger. They thought that eventually, I'd get over it, that I'd go back to being the same compliant mother I'd always been. On Tuesday, Jessica tried a different strategy. She came into the kitchen while I was making lunch, a forced smile on her face. "Eleanor," she said sweetly, "I know things have been tense lately, and I want you to know that I'm sorry." I looked at her without saying anything. "Really," she continued, "Mark and I have been so stressed about the apartment, and I think we haven't been fair to you." "Uh-huh," I said, continuing with what I was doing. "What I mean is, we value everything you do for us, and we want to make it up to you." "Make it up to me?" I asked. "Yes," she said, pulling out her phone. "Look, I found this spa that has an all-day package, massages, facial, everything. I thought we could go together this weekend, you and me, like friends." I looked her straight in the eye. "Who's going to pay for this spa, Jessica?" She blinked, uncomfortable. "Well, I thought maybe you could treat me, as a gesture of—" "No," I interrupted. "I'm not treating you to a spa." Her smile vanished. "It was just an idea," she said sharply. "You don't have to be rude." "I'm not being rude," I replied. "I'm being clear. I'm not going to spend my money buying you things so you can pretend to appreciate me." She opened her mouth, offended. "I'm not pretending anything." "Yes, you are, Jessica. And we both know it." She left the kitchen, muttering something I couldn't hear. I didn't care. On Wednesday night, Mark tried his own approach. He knocked on my door around 10 o'clock. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Go ahead," I said. He came in and sat on the edge of the bed. I was folding clothes, putting the last few things in my suitcase. "Mom," he said in a tired voice, "I don't want us to be fighting." "We're not fighting, Mark," I replied without looking at him. "I'm just not willing to let you disrespect me anymore. I never wanted to disrespect you." "But you did," I said, stopping and looking at him. "You did it when you yelled at me at dinner. You did it when you took my room without asking if I was okay. You did it every time you assumed I was going to solve your problems." He ran his hands over his face. "I don't know what else you want me to do. I already said I'm sorry." "You haven't said you're sorry, Mark. You've said you're sorry that I'm upset. It's not the same." He fell silent. "You know what the problem is?" I continued. "You think that by saying sorry, everything magically goes back to the way it was. But it doesn't work like that. You can't disrespect me and expect me to just forget it." "It wasn't my intention to make you feel bad," he said. And for the first time, he sounded genuine. "But you did," I replied. And intentions don't change the damage. He nodded slowly. What can I do to fix it? Nothing, Mark. It's too late to fix it. He looked at me, confused. What does that mean? It means I've already made decisions about my life, and I'm not changing them. What decisions? You'll find out soon enough, I said, and continued folding clothes. He sat there for a few more minutes, waiting for me to say something else, but I didn't. He finally got up and left the room, closing the door softly. I barely slept that night. Tomorrow was Thursday. Tomorrow I would sign the sale. Tomorrow everything would change. I got up early. I dressed carefully. Black pants, a white blouse, my pearl earrings. I wanted to look good, to feel good for this moment. I went down to the kitchen and made coffee. Mark and Jessica were still asleep. I left a note on the table. Went out to run some errands. Back this afternoon. Sharon picked me up at 9 o'clock sharp. I got in her car, and before starting it, she looked at me seriously. Ready? More than ready, I replied. We went straight to the title company's office. The buyer was already there, a young man in his late 30s with his wife. We greeted each other formally and sat around the closing agent's table. The agent read all the documents in that monotone voice that lawyers have. He explained the terms, the conditions, the dates. The buyer was going to pay $315,000. The transaction would be completed today. I had until Sunday to completely vacate the property. Any questions? The agent asked. None, I replied. I signed every page, one after another, my name in cursive, Eleanor Vance, sealing the end of an era. When I finished, the closing agent handed me a check. $315,000. I held it in my hands, feeling the weight of freedom. Sharon squeezed my hand under the table. We left the title company's office around noon. Sharon hugged me on the street. You did it, she said. You really did it. Yes, I replied, and was surprised to feel tears in my eyes. They weren't tears of sadness. They were of relief. Want to get some lunch before you go back? Sharon asked. Yes, I said. I want to celebrate. We went to a small restaurant we liked, one overlooking a park. We ordered white wine and pasta. We toasted to new beginnings. When are you going to tell them? Sharon asked. Tonight, I replied. When I get home? Do you want me to go with you? No, I said. This is something I have to do alone. I returned to the house around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Mark's car was parked outside. I took a deep breath before opening the door. I walked into the house and found Mark and Jessica in the living room, watching television. They looked up when they saw me. Where were you? Mark asked. Taking care of business, I replied, setting my purse on the dining room table. What business? His expression had that annoyance I knew so well, but he didn't say anything more. I went up to my room and sat on the bed for several minutes, mentally preparing myself for what was next. At 7 o'clock, I came back down. Mark was in the kitchen, making himself a sandwich. Jessica was still in the living room, phone in hand. Mark, Jessica, I said from the kitchen doorway, I need to talk to you. Mark put the knife down on the counter. About what? Come to the living room, please. They both followed me, their expressions a mix of curiosity and irritation. We sat down, them on the sofa, me in the armchair. I took a deep breath and spoke in a clear, firm voice. I sold the house. There was absolute silence. Mark stared at me as if he hadn't understood the words. Jessica blinked several times. What did you say? Mark finally asked. I said I sold the house. I signed the papers this morning. The new owners take possession on Sunday. Mark shot to his feet. What? You can't do that. I already did, I replied calmly. This is my house, he yelled. I grew up here. You can't just sell it without consulting me. This house is in my name, Mark. I don't need to consult you about anything. Jessica stood up too. Wait. And where are we supposed to live? That's your problem, not mine, I replied. Our problem? Mark repeated, incredulous. Mom, you just made us homeless. You haven't had a home here for a week, ever since I told you that you couldn't stay. The problem is you didn't believe me. This can't be happening, Jessica said, pacing back and forth. This has to be a joke. It's not a joke, I said. You have until Sunday to get your things out." "No," Mark shouted. "I'm not accepting this. I'm going to talk to a lawyer. I'm going to contest the sale." "You can try," I replied. "But the house was in my name. There are no debts, no mortgage, and the sale is completely legal. I already consulted with my lawyer." "Your lawyer?" Mark asked. "Since when do you have a lawyer?" "Since I decided it was time to protect what's mine." Jessica pointed a finger at me. "You are a selfish, cruel old woman." I looked at her without blinking. "Tell me, Jessica, am I selfish because I sold my house, or am I selfish because I wouldn't let you keep using me?" "Using you," Mark yelled. "We're your family. And I am your mother, not your solution to all your problems." Mark ran his hands through his hair, clearly desperate. "Mom, please. There has to be a way to fix this. Cancel the sale. Tell them you changed your mind." "I'm not canceling anything. But we have nowhere to go." "Then you'd better start looking," I said, getting up from the armchair. "You have 3 days." Mark blocked my path. "I'm not letting you do this." "Move, Mark," I said in a low, firm voice. "Not until you explain what the hell is wrong with you." "Who are you?" "This person isn't my mother." "You're right," I replied. "This isn't the mother you knew. That mother got tired of being invisible. This mother decided to live for herself." I gently pushed him aside and went up the stairs. I heard Jessica screaming downstairs. "This isn't over. We're going to sue you." "Go ahead," I shouted from the top of the stairs. "Talk to all the lawyers you want." I went into my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and waited for my heart to stop pounding so hard. I had done it. I had told them the truth. And the sky hadn't fallen. My phone rang. It was Sharon. "Did you tell them?" "Yes," I replied. "How did they react?" "As expected. Screaming. Threats. Drama. Are you okay?" "I'm perfect," I said, and was surprised to realize it was true. I didn't sleep that night. I heard Mark and Jessica arguing late into the night, their voices rising and falling, alternating between rage and panic. At one point, I heard Jessica crying. Mark called someone on the phone, probably a lawyer, but from what I could overhear, they told him the same thing he already knew. The sale was legal. Friday morning, I went down to the kitchen early. Mark was already there, sitting at the table with a cold cup of coffee in front of him. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes, and his hair was a mess. "Mom," he said when he saw me, "we need to talk." "We talked yesterday," I replied, pouring myself coffee. "No, really talk. Without yelling. Please." I sat down across from him. "Talk." "I know I messed up," he said, staring at his mug. "I know I said horrible things. I know I treated you badly. Yes, you did. And I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." I looked him in the eyes, searching for sincerity. I found desperation. "Mark," I said softly, "the problem isn't just what you said at dinner. The problem is that dinner was just the final straw. It's been years of you treating me like I exist only to solve your problems." "It's not like that," he protested weakly. "Yes, it is," I insisted. "When was the last time you asked me how I was? When was the last time you visited me just because you wanted to see me, not because you needed something?" He fell silent. "Exactly," I said. "You don't remember because it's never happened." "I'll change," he said. "I promise you. I'll be a better son." "I don't need you to be a better son, Mark. It's too late for that. What I need is to live my life without feeling like I owe someone something all the time." "And what am I supposed to do?" he asked, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. "What all adults do," I replied. "You'll figure it out." Jessica came down at that moment, also with dark circles, also disheveled. She looked at us both and then poured herself coffee without a word. The atmosphere in the house that Friday was tense and silent. Mark and Jessica spent most of the day in their room, on the phone, looking for apartments, talking to potential landlords, moving their small life from one place to another. I continued packing my things calmly. Every object I packed was one step closer to my freedom. In the mid-afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Miss Vance?" a young woman's voice said. "Yes, this is she." "It's Emily, my granddaughter. the only person in this whole family who had treated me with genuine affection. "Hi, sweetie," I said, my voice softening. "Grandma," she said, and she sounded worried. "My dad called me. He told me you sold the house." "Yes, Emily. I sold it." "Is it true?" "Completely true." There was a pause. Then she said, "Good." "Good?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, good. I heard what my dad said to you at dinner last week. I was there, remember? I was so embarrassed. I was so angry. But I didn't know what to say. I felt a lump in my throat. "What you did is right, Grandma," Emily continued. "You deserve to live your life. You deserve respect. And if my dad won't give it to you, then you deserve to get away." "Thank you, sweetie," I said, my voice breaking. "Where are you going to go?" she asked. "I bought a house on the beach," I replied. "Small, quiet, with an ocean view." "That sounds beautiful." "It is. Can I visit you?" she asked shyly. "Anytime, Emily. You will always be welcome." After hanging up with Emily, I sat in my room, looking out the window. Hearing her support had been like receiving a hug after days of coldness. At least someone in this family understood. Saturday dawned overcast. I woke up early and continued packing. I already had 4 full suitcases and 6 sealed boxes. Sharon was coming later to help me take everything to the storage unit. I went down to the kitchen and found Jessica sitting at the table with her laptop open. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying all night. "Good morning," I said neutrally. She didn't even look up. She didn't answer. I poured myself coffee and leaned against the counter. The silence was thick, uncomfortable. "We found an apartment," Jessica said finally, without looking at me. "It's awful, small, old, in a bad neighborhood. But it's the only thing we can afford." I said nothing. "It costs $1,200 a month," she continued, "more than double what we were paying. And they want 2 months deposit plus the first month. That's $3,600 we don't have." She kept talking as if I was going to offer to help, as if this was all a negotiation. "We're going to have to borrow money," she said, finally looking at me. "Probably from my sister, who will never let us forget she had to bail us out." "You're still waiting for me to offer to pay for it, aren't you?" I asked. "You're his mother," Jessica replied. "I thought you'd at least care." "I care about Mark," I said. "What I don't care about is continuing to be his permanent solution to problems he creates for himself." "We didn't create this," she said, raising her voice. "You created this. You left us homeless." "You had a home," I replied calmly. "An apartment you were renting, which you lost because you couldn't pay. That's not my fault. We could have stayed here." "No, you couldn't. This is my house, and I decided to sell it." "You're cruel," Jessica said, her voice trembling. "I always thought you were a good person, but you're cruel." I looked at her directly. "Do you know what's cruel, Jessica? What's cruel is shouting at someone to pack their bags in their own home. What's cruel is taking someone's bedroom without asking. What's cruel is assuming someone exists only to serve you. I never did that." "Yes, you did. From the day you entered this family, you treated me like an employee, not a mother-in-law." Jessica slammed her laptop shut. "I'm not arguing with you anymore. You've already won. You've humiliated us. You've made it clear you don't want us here." "It's not about wanting you or not wanting you," I said. "It's about me no longer sacrificing my peace for your comfort." She grabbed her laptop and left the kitchen without another word. Sharon arrived at 10 o'clock in the morning with her SUV. Together, we started carrying the boxes and suitcases down. Mark came out of his room when he heard the noise. "What are you doing? You're not waiting until tomorrow?" "There's no reason to wait." He stood on the stairs, watching me carry one box after another. He didn't offer to help, he just watched, his expression somewhere between confused and hurt. Sharon and I made 3 trips to the storage unit. On the last one, as we closed the back of the SUV, Sharon said, "Tomorrow's the big day." "Tomorrow I leave," I confirmed. "How do you feel?" "Light," I replied, "like I've shed a weight I've been carrying for decades." We returned to the house at noon. Mark and Jessica were packing, too. I saw boxes in the living room, piles of clothes, scattered objects. The house that had been my home for so many years now looked like a place being dismantled. I went up to my room and took the last few things out of the drawers. Old photos, letters, documents, everything fit in one small box. It was surprising how little I actually needed. That night, I made dinner just for myself, a simple plate of pasta. Mark and Jessica ordered takeout and ate in their room. We didn't see each other all evening. Around 9 o'clock, someone knocked on my door. It was Mark. "Can I come in?" "Go ahead." He came in and stood awkwardly by the door. "You're leaving tomorrow," he said. "Yes." "Do you know where you're going?" "To the beach." "You bought another house?" "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the night of the dinner," I replied. "Since you yelled at me." Mark looked down. "I didn't think you'd go this far." "Neither did I admitted. "But once I made the decision, I knew it was the right one." "Is there anything I can say to make you change your mind?" "No, Mark. Not anymore." He nodded slowly. "Are you going to be okay? Alone in a new house, far from everything?" "I'm going to be better than ever," I said with conviction. "And us?" "You're going to have to learn to be okay without me." Mark ran his hand over his face. He was quiet for so long I thought he had left, but he was still there, leaning against the wall. "I'm sorry I failed you," he finally said in a low voice. I looked at him and saw something I hadn't seen in years, genuine vulnerability. "I'm sorry for a lot of things too, Mark," I replied. "I'm sorry I didn't set boundaries sooner. I'm sorry I let you treat me this way for so long. I'm sorry I confused love with sacrifice." He looked up. "Do you not love me anymore?" "I love you," I said. "You're my son, and I will always love you. But I'm not going to let that love destroy me anymore." Mark nodded, his eyes shining. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this." His words hurt, but not like they used to. They didn't pierce my chest with paralyzing guilt. They just hurt like an uncomfortable truth hurts. "That's okay, Mark," I said. "I don't need your forgiveness. I need my peace." He left the room, closing the door softly. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. There was no anxiety, no insomnia, no tossing and turning, wondering if I was doing the right thing. I knew I was. Sunday dawned sunny. I got up at 6 o'clock. I showered. I dressed in comfortable clothes for the drive. I brought my last 2 suitcases down and put them by the door. Mark and Jessica were still asleep. Sharon arrived promptly at 7 o'clock. We loaded the suitcases into her SUV. Then I went back into the house for one last look. I walked through every room. The living room where Mark took his first steps. The kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals. The backyard where my husband used to read the paper on Sundays. Every corner held memories. But none of those memories made me want to stay. I went up to what had been my room. Jessica had transformed it. She had changed the curtains, moved the furniture, hung new pictures. There was nothing of mine left in there. Perfect, I thought. I went downstairs and found Mark in the living room. He had woken up and was standing there in his pajamas, looking like he hadn't slept. "You're leaving?" he asked. "Yes." "Can I have your new address?" "I'm going to give it to Emily," I replied. "If she decides to share it with you, that's her decision." Mark clenched his jaw. "So that's how it's going to be?" "That's how it's going to be, until you can prove you can respect my boundaries." He didn't reply. I walked to the door. Before leaving, I turned around one last time. "Take care of yourself, Mark." "You too, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. I walked out of the house and closed the door behind me. I didn't look back. There were no tears, just a long, liberating sigh. Sharon was waiting for me in the SUV with a huge smile. "Ready for your new life?" "More than ready," I replied. We drove the 2 hours to the coast, listening to music, laughing, planning all the things we were going to do in the new house. Sharon was going to stay with me for the weekend to help me get settled. We arrived at the beach house around 10 o'clock in the morning. The sun was shining on the ocean, and the sound of the waves was the only thing you could hear. Sharon turned off the engine, and we both sat for a moment, just looking at the house. "It's yours," Sharon said. "It's mine," I repeated, and the words sounded incredible. We got out of the SUV, and I opened the front door with my keys. The house smelled clean, like a new beginning. The windows let in natural light that brightened every corner. It was small, but it was perfect. Sharon and I spent the rest of the day unpacking. We put my clothes in the closet, arranged the furniture I had bought the week before, hung a few pictures on the walls. By the afternoon, the house already felt like a home. We sat on the deck with a bottle of white wine, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in oranges and pinks as the sun sank into the horizon. "Here's to you," Sharon said, raising her glass. "To the bravest woman I know." We clinked our glasses and drank in silence. "Do you think Mark will be okay?" I asked after a while. "Eventually he'll be okay," Sharon replied. "But that's not your responsibility, Eleanor." "I know, but he's still my son. And you're still a person who deserves to live without guilt." She was right. I knew it. But decades of being a mother don't get erased overnight. That night, after Sharon went to sleep in the guest room, I stayed on the deck alone, looking at the stars. I took out my phone and took a picture of the dark ocean, lit only by the moon. I sent it to Emily with a message. "I'm home." She replied immediately with a heart emoji. And then, "I'm so happy for you, Grandma. I'll visit soon." I smiled at the screen. Then another message came in. It was from a number I didn't have saved, but I recognized the area code. It was Mark. "Mom," the message read. "Jessica and I got the apartment. We're moving in tomorrow. Just wanted you to know." I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because there was nothing to say. Another message arrived 5 minutes later. "I know you're angry, and I get it, but I hope someday we can talk." I put the phone away and went back to watching the ocean. The following days were filled with a peace I hadn't experienced in years. I woke up to the sound of the waves, ate breakfast on the deck, walked on the beach, read and cooked just for myself. There was no yelling, no demands, no guilt. Sharon stayed with me all week. In the afternoons, we'd walk along the boardwalk, visit the local markets, try small restaurants. It was like being on a permanent vacation. On Wednesday, while we were having coffee at a cafe facing the ocean, my phone rang. It was Carol, my sister-in-law. "Eleanor," she said when I answered. "I need to talk to you." "Hi, Carol. What's wrong?" Mark told me everything. About the house, the move, all of it. "Uh-huh," I said, bracing for the lecture. "And I want you to know that I am on your side." I was quiet, stunned. "What Mark did to you at that dinner was horrible," Carol continued. "I was there. I heard it, and I was ashamed I didn't say anything. But I was in shock. I couldn't believe my nephew would talk to his mother like that." "Thank you for saying that," I replied, feeling relieved. "You did the right thing by leaving," she said. "You did the right thing selling the house. Sometimes family hurts you more than strangers, and you don't have to stay just because they're family." Carol and I talked for almost an hour. She told me she had spoken to Mark, that she had told him exactly what she thought of his behavior. That Mark had gotten defensive at first, but eventually admitted he had been wrong. "He's scared," Carol said. "Scared that he's lost you, but he still doesn't understand that he caused this himself." "Someday he'll understand," I said. "Or he won't, but it's not my problem anymore." When I hung up, Sharon looked at me curiously. "Who was that?" "Carol," I replied. "She called to tell me I did the right thing." Sharon smiled. "The world is lining up in your favor, Eleanor." That afternoon, while we were walking on the beach, I received another message. This time, from Jessica. It was a long message. It started by saying she never thought things would go this far, that she had also grown up with a difficult mother, and maybe that's why she didn't realize when she was crossing boundaries. That she was sorry for making me feel invisible in my own home. She didn't apologize directly, but it was close. "I don't know if you and Mark can fix things," she wrote at the end, "but I want you to know that I understand why you left." I read the message 3 times. Then I showed it to Sharon. "Are you going to reply?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "I need time to process." Sharon nodded. "You have all the time in the world." On Friday, Emily video called me. Her face popped up on the screen with a huge smile. "Grandma," she said, "you look so good. You look happy." "I am happy," I replied. I turned my phone around to show her the view of the ocean from the deck. She gasped. "It's beautiful. Grandma, I'm so proud of you." "Thank you, sweetie. How are you?" "I'm good," she said. "I went to help my dad with the move yesterday. The apartment is small, but it's clean. I think they're going to be okay. I'm glad to hear that. Dad asks about you, Emily said hesitantly. He doesn't know if he should call you or give you space. Tell him he can call me when he's ready to have a real conversation, I replied. No yelling, no manipulation, just honesty. Emily nodded. I'll tell him. We spent the rest of the video call talking about her classes, her job, her life. She told me she had started therapy to process some things with her family. She said her therapist told her it was important to set healthy boundaries. Just like you, Grandma, she said. You set boundaries and respected yourself. That's what I'm learning to do too. I felt so proud of her. On Saturday afternoon, Sharon had to return to the city. We said goodbye with a long hug at the door. Are you going to be okay alone? She asked. I'm going to be perfect, I replied. If you need me, call me. Anytime. I know. I watched her drive away in her SUV and then went back into my house. My home. Those words still filled me with wonder. That night, sitting on the deck with a glass of wine, my phone rang. It was Mark. I hesitated before answering. Finally, I swiped the screen. Hello, Mark. Hi, Mom, he said. He sounded tired. Can I talk to you? Go ahead. There was a long pause. Then I heard him take a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot this week. About what happened. About what I said. About how I treated you. I'm listening, I said, not making it easy for him. You were right, he said finally. About everything. I treated you like you were my solution for everything. I yelled at you when I should have respected you. I took your space as if it was my right. And I never, ever asked you how you were or what you needed. I didn't respond. I let the silence do its work. And I know apologizing isn't going to fix everything, he continued. I know I caused damage that will take time to heal, but I want you to know that I am sorry. I am truly sorry. His voice cracked at the end. Thank you for saying that, I replied calmly. I needed to hear it. Do you think you can ever forgive me? I don't know, Mark. I honestly don't know. He took a shaky breath. I understand. But what I do know, I continued, is that I am not going back to living the way I did. I'm not going to be the mother who says yes to everything. I will not sacrifice my peace for your comfort. I'm not going to ask you to, he said. I just want. I don't know. I want to have a relationship with you. A real one. Not one where I only call you when I need something. I'd like that, I said. But it's going to take time, and it's going to require you to actually change. Not just say you're going to change. I will, he promised. I'll show you. We hung up shortly after. There were no exaggerated promises, no instant reconciliation. Just a small first step towards something that might, someday, become a healthier relationship. I stayed on the deck late into the night, listening to the ocean, feeling the salt breeze on my face. For the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about what someone else needed from me. I was just present, here, now, with myself. The following week, I settled into a routine that filled me with satisfaction. I woke up early and walked on the beach before the tourists arrived. The exercise was good for me. It cleared my mind, it gave me energy for the rest of the day. I met other women who also walked in the mornings. Women my age, some widows, some divorced, all looking for the same thing I was: peace, connection, a life of their own. We formed an informal group. We'd meet at 7 o'clock, walk for an hour, and then have breakfast together at different cafes on the boardwalk. One of them was named Diane Caldero, a 65-year-old woman who had been a teacher for 40 years. She told me she had moved to the beach after retiring, tired of living in the city, tired of her family's expectations. It's funny, she said to me one day over coffee, we spend our whole lives taking care of others. And when we finally decide to take care of ourselves, they call us selfish. Exactly, I replied, as if having your own life is a crime. We became fast friends. Diane introduced me to her circle, women who played cards on Tuesdays, who went to yoga on Thursdays, who hosted dinners on Saturdays. They welcomed me with open arms. For the first time in years, I had a social life that didn't revolve around my family. I had friends who called me to go out, not to ask for favors. I had plans that I made because I wanted to, not because someone else needed them. A month after I moved, Emily came to visit. She arrived on a Friday afternoon with a small backpack and a radiant smile. "Grandma," she said, hugging me tight. "This place is incredible." I showed her every corner of the house. She took pictures of everything: the deck, the ocean, my room, the kitchen. Then she posted a picture on her social media with a caption that read, "Visiting the bravest woman I know." That night, we cooked together. We made fresh fish I had bought at the market, a salad, rice. We ate on the deck, watching the sunset. Emily told me about college, about her friends, about a boy she liked. It was so different from the dinners at my old house. There was no tension, no silent demands, no resentment floating in the air. There was just genuine conversation between two people who truly loved each other. "How's your dad?" I asked eventually. Emily set her fork down. "He's okay. Different. Quieter, more thoughtful. I think he's really processing what happened." "And Jessica?" "Also different. Less, I don't know how to say it, less demanding. Maybe. Like she had a realization." "I'm glad to hear that," I said sincerely. Emily looked at me with those dark eyes, so much like my own. "Dad wants to visit you, but he's afraid you'll say no." "I won't say no," I replied. "But I'm not ready yet." "I understand," Emily said. "And he'll understand too." On Saturday, I took Emily to my favorite spots. The artisan market, the bakery with the best pastries, the viewpoint that overlooked the whole bay. She fell in love with the town just as much as I had. "I could live here," she said as we walked along the boardwalk. "It's so peaceful, so beautiful." "Anytime, sweetie. You will always have a room waiting for you." Emily left on Sunday afternoon. We said goodbye with a long hug. "Take care, Grandma, and don't let anyone make you feel bad for choosing yourself." "Never again," I promised. I watched her drive away and went back into my house, feeling a mixture of nostalgia and satisfaction. Nostalgia for the days when Emily was little and I was the grandma who spoiled her. Satisfaction because now our relationship was between two adults who respected each other. 2 months after I moved, I received a package in the mail. It was from Mark. Inside was a handwritten letter and a framed photo. The photo was of Mark when he was 5 years old. We were at a park, he was riding on my shoulders, both of us laughing. I had forgotten that photo existed. The letter read, "Mom, I found this picture while I was unpacking. It made me remember who you always were for me. My refuge, my support, my everything. And it made me realize when I stopped treating you like that. I don't know at what point I started seeing you as a resource instead of a person, but I know it was wrong. I'm going to therapy. My therapist is helping me understand patterns I repeated without realizing it. Patterns of taking without giving, of demanding without thanking, of assuming instead of asking. I'm not writing this to ask you to come back or to forgive everything immediately. I just want you to know that I'm working on being better. For me, for Jessica, and someday, I hope, for you. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you. I just didn't know how to show it without asking for something in return. Mark." I read the letter 3 times. I cried a little. Not from sadness, but from hope. Maybe my son really was changing. Maybe moving away had been the best thing I could have done, not just for me, but for him, too. I took a picture of the letter and sent it to Sharon. She replied, "Real progress. But don't let your guard down yet." She was right. Real change took time. 3 months after I moved, I hosted a small get-together at my house. I invited my group of friends from the boardwalk, Diane, Sharon, who came from the city, and 3 other women I had met in my yoga class. We cooked together, laughed, drank wine, told stories. Every one of us had a similar story. Women who had given so much that they had forgotten themselves. Women who had finally decided to live. "A toast to the women who dared," Diane said, raising her glass. "To those who said enough. To those who chose peace over guilt." We all toasted. The sound of clinking glasses mixed with the laughter and the sound of the ocean. That night, after everyone had left, I sat alone on the deck with a cup of tea. I took out my phone and opened my notes app. I wrote, "Today marks 3 months since I moved. 3 months since I made the hardest and most necessary decision of my life. 3 months since I stopped living for others and started living for myself. And what I've discovered is this: I am not selfish for loving myself. I am not a bad mother for setting boundaries. I am not cruel for protecting my peace. I am human. I am a woman who deserves dignity, respect, and tranquility. And finally, after 69 years, I understood. I saved the note and looked at the dark ocean, lit by the moon. Mark called me once a week now. Short conversations, asking for nothing, just checking in. There was still awkwardness between us, but there was also something new, respect. Jessica had sent me flowers on my birthday with a card that just said, "Happy birthday, Eleanor. I hope you're doing well." It was a small but significant gesture. Emily visited me once a month. We had become closer than ever. And I, Eleanor Vance, continued to wake up every morning to the sound of the ocean, continued to drink my coffee on the deck, continued to walk on the beach with my new friends, and continued to build a life that was entirely mine. One morning, as I was walking along the water's edge, my bare feet sinking into the wet sand, I thought about everything I had left behind and everything I had gained. I had left behind a house full of memories, but empty of respect. I had left behind a version of myself that existed only to serve. I had left behind the guilt I had been taught to carry. And I had gained peace. I had gained dignity. I had gained time for myself. I had gained true friends. I had gained my own life. The sun was beginning to rise on the horizon, painting the sky in impossible colors. I stopped and watched the beauty, feeling completely present. A wave came in and washed over my feet. I smiled. Finally, after so many years of taking care of others, wondering what they needed, what they wanted, how I could help them, I was finally asking the most important question. What do I need? What do I want? How can I help myself? And the answers were simple but profound. I need peace. I want freedom. I can help myself by choosing myself. I took out my phone and took a selfie with the sunrise behind me. My hair was messy from the wind, my face bare of makeup, with wrinkles that told the story of 69 years of life. But my eyes were shining in a way they hadn't shined in decades. I sent the photo to Emily with a message. "Good morning from paradise." She replied with heart emojis and then, "I love you, Grandma. You're my inspiration." I put the phone away and kept walking. Because that was exactly what I was doing now. Moving forward. Toward the life I deserved. Toward the peace I had searched for. Finally, after so many years of being a mother, a wife, a caregiver, a savior, after so many years of being everything to everyone but myself, I was the one deciding who to take care of. And I had chosen to take care of me.